What's going on, everybody? Tom Coffey here, founder of obstaclecourseworkouts.com. Today I want to talk with you about how to train for a Spartan Stadium race. So if you're not familiar, a Spartan Stadium obstacle course race is a Spartan race done in a sports stadium, and it's been a pretty cool event Spartan came out with a couple years ago that allows you to race in some of the most iconic sports stadiums around the world. So pretty cool. But if you're used to regular Spartan race training for like a beast or a super or even an ultra, there's some big differences between those and training for a Spartan Stadium race. And I'll go over the three big differences I think that you need to address, and then we can start to dive into those a little bit more specifically as well. So just kind of the 30,000 foot view of the three big differences, the three big areas you should kind of be aware of when training for a Spartan Stadium race. Number one, train to be fast and explosive versus being able to go long and slow for hours and hours, and I'll get more into that in a second. Number two, make sure that your technique, your obstacle technique, is on point. Make sure it's very flawless. And number three, nutrition isn't as important as you may think, and I'll dive into that more specifically in just a minute. So number one, training to be fast and explosive, right? So a stadium race is like 3 miles, 3.1 miles, so the equivalent to about a 5K. It's got about 18 to 20, maybe 22 obstacles. So it's designed to be fast. It's designed to be aggressive, be in your face, be intense. It might hurt a little bit, get your heart rate through the roof, right? But it's going to be over relatively quickly. Say the fastest people are doing them like 40 minutes or so, even faster, which is crazy fast. But realistically, like hour, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, and then it's done. So it's not an all-day event. So you should skew your training towards being more explosive, being quick, being more intense, getting your heart rate jacked up, keeping it there, and getting used to moving around while you're fatigued and your heart rate's going a mile a minute, versus spending all your training time just kind of grinding out these long, slow workouts. So what are some examples of exercises you could start to build workouts around that are fast and explosive, kind of meet that criteria? We're thinking burpees, everyone's favorite, the classic, kettlebell swings, sled pushes, any type of sprinting. Hill sprints are great. If you can sprint up stairs, like stadium steps, that's going to be great. Parachute sprints, where you attach a parachute to your back and add resistance that way. What else? Carrying heavy weight, right? For short distances, like heavy weight, heavy sandbag. If you can carry it upstairs, up a hill, that's going to really help you. Stuff like bear crawls, leopard crawls, backward crawling, just kind of getting used to that. Climbing ropes even. So jump roping is a good one. Doing sprints on an Airdyne bike or a Concept 2 rower, or using the stair climber at your gym. But what I'm getting at is all these can be, they're pretty intense efforts, right? So you'll get your heart rate up, you'll keep it there, but your workouts should probably be done fairly quickly as well. You don't need to spend hours and hours doing this. And just on a note, as the length of the race gets longer, it's almost the opposite would be true, right? So I'm not saying long, slow workouts don't have a purpose. They certainly do, especially if you're training for a long race like a beast or an ultra. But for the Spartan Stadium, you're really thinking like high intensity workouts, stuff that gets your heart rate jacked. Short CrossFit circuits, short CrossFit WODs are honestly a good place to kind of dig in. Sort of that like 8 to 20 minute range would be awesome. And then getting in, some sprinting, some short distance sprinting, like 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, 800s maybe, I think is probably the most you'd want to tackle. And just keeping the workouts intense. I've written a blog article that explains more of this. It's linked in the description below. So if you want a little more elaboration on this type of stuff, check that article out, and it'll give you a little bit more of a resource to dive into. So moving on to number two, technique. Because the race is so short, because the Spartan Stadium is so short and fast, you don't have a lot of available time to be penalized doing burpees, right? So if you fail an obstacle at a Spartan race, the penalty is 30 burpees. That is still true at the stadium events, the stadium races. And because these races are like 50 minutes, hour, 70 minutes in length, if you spend 6 or 8 minutes total doing burpees because you failed a few obstacles, that's a serious addition to your time, and it can really set you back in the rankings versus say like a Spartan beast where you might have hours still to go and doing a few minutes of burpees is still recoverable. So with that in mind, as much as you can practice technique, the big one would be spear throw and rope climbs seem to kind of get people the most. I would say do it. If you can go in and you feel pretty confident nailing those 2 obstacles, you're going to save yourself a lot of potential burpees and also save yourself a lot of time. If you're competing, if you're trying to podium at a Spartan stadium, then your technique has to be really dialed in. Because again, the difference between like first and fourth could literally be 60 seconds or 75 seconds. It's very small margin. And you don't have that time available, that luxury to spend time doing burpees. So especially if your goal is to podium, but even if it's not, you definitely want to make sure your technique is as dialed in as possible, and that will really help your score improve. And then number 3, nutrition isn't as important as you think it is. And what I mean by that is it's important, but again, because the race is so short, like you don't need to do a carbo load, 3 days prior to the event. You don't need to carry a bunch of food with you on the course. You actually don't really need any food at all for a race this short because your muscles have enough stored muscle glycogen, which is the energy, basically the sugar available for energy in your muscles to last for the duration of that race, right? You're not going to bonk out. The one thing you do want to pay attention to though is hydration. If you're kind of used to training, without a lot of liquid, you might be able to get away with not drinking anything. If it's a really hot day, right? If the weather's not favorable, super hot, super humid, you're sweating a lot, it might be advisable to drink, 8 to 10 ounces of Gatorade or a sports drink, or take some sort of electrolyte supplement, electrolyte powder in water. But you're not going to need a super large amount of liquid because these races are so short. As soon as the race is done, you can take down a coconut water or a Gatorade or whatever. You can start the recovery. But because it is such a short event, you're not going to really need to worry about this elaborate refueling plan. What should you carry with you? Whereas if you're running something longer, like a beast or an ultra, you're going to need to really focus. That's a big part of the training is the fueling, because if you don't get that right, you can really hurt yourself, both hurt yourself physically and in performance wise. With the Spartan Stadium, you can kind of bypass that to an extent. I would just, again, focus on the fluid to make sure you don't get dehydrated, but it's more of an individual basis, and I guess weather permitting as well, whether you're taking in a bunch of fluids during the race or just blowing right through and then rehydrating and recovering afterwards. So just to kind of recap the 3 kind of 30,000 foot view training tips for a Spartan Stadium race. 1, train to be fast and explosive versus going long and slow. And again, you don't have to do every workout intense. I would say maybe a good rule of thumb, 4 out of 5 workouts, right? Like 80% of your workouts should be in the fast explosive realm. And if you want to have 1 workout a week or so, kind of be more slow and discontinuous, I'd say that's fine. But for the most part, fast, explosive, aggressive, high heart rate, right? Over quickly. That should kind of be the theme of your workouts for this type of event. Number 2, make sure your technique is on point. So that means practice rope climbs, practice spear throws as much as you can, if possible. I get that's not a realistic option for everybody, but just do your best. Again, if your goal is to podium, you need to have the techniques dialed in because you just don't have the time to do burpee penalties. So make sure your technique is on point. And number 3, because the race is so short, you don't really need an elaborate nutrition plan. You probably don't need to eat anything during the race because it's over so fast. You won't need to worry about it. Just pay attention to hydration. Maybe take some sports drink during the race, especially if it's super hot. You probably can still wait until afterwards and start the recovery after that. So those are the 3 big kind of 30,000 foot view tips that I have. And if you want more elaboration on this, check out the blog article I wrote. I think it unpacks a little bit more of this and goes into detail on these concepts a bit more, and it can help supplement this video. So that's linked in the description below. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Again, I'm Tom Coffey, founder of obstaclecourseworkouts.com. Till next time, my friends.